Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. And today I want to talk about questions I can't or won't answer. There's a lot of questions that get asked on this channel. I try to answer them either right there on the comment section, or I'll even do a video about them if it requires a longer answer. And I'll talk about that. But I noticed there's a lot of questions that I'm skipping. So I thought I'd kind of talk about why I do that and put it all here in one video. So if people are wondering why I'm doing it, they can look at this video. Let me talk about first the questions that people ask that I cannot answer. First of all, a real common one is people ask me to show code or upload code from games like, Arcanum or Temple, which I've said I own. I cannot do that. The contract is extraordinarily clear on this. I own the code, so I can use it in subsequent games. I can't release the code because, well, there's a number of reasons, but one of the biggest ones was I'm not allowed to release the code or do any patch that isn't authorized by the publisher because such things could be used to circumvent piracy restrictions. Even though I don't think, I don't even think Securom exists anymore, that doesn't change my contract. My contract just says I can't do it. When we asked them why is that in there, they said, oh, it's because of piracy reasons. It doesn't say for the reason of avoiding piracy. It just says, okay, when we made Arcanum, they said you can own the code, but you can never release the source code and you can never make a patch without our authorization. Boom. So even though that's with a publisher that doesn't exist anymore, someone else bought the rights and they own that contract. So no code for you guys. Second, people frequently ask questions about the design of Vampire, and I don't know. I can't answer that. I literally don't know. I wasn't on that team for almost the first 2 years it was being put together. So I don't know why some of the stuff was designed the way it was, who designed it. I literally wasn't on there. When I did get onto the team, I mainly did AI for some and not even all of the bosses. So past their design, like you want to know about the sheriff and why he picked up trucks and hookers and cops, that's me. Anything else, I do not know. You would literally have to get Jason Anderson to answer those questions. A third type of question I can answer and I just skip is when people ask about the indie development scene. I've never been in it. I don't know anything about it that you don't know. So when people ask me questions about it, I really don't know what to say other than I enjoy a lot of indie games because they're very imaginative. But I'm a consumer just like you are when it comes to indie devs. Some other questions people have asked in different ways. People have asked me to compare working at a pure tech company to a game company. I do not know. I've never worked at a pure tech company. I've only ever worked at a game company. I've been paid to teach classes at a university, both when I worked at Troika and also when I was a TA at University of California, Irvine, when I was a PhD student there. So I have been paid to do something other than make games, but I've only ever worked at game companies. Started when I was 16, never done anything else. So I really can't tell you about anything other than game companies. And I can't compare a game company to a tech company like Google or even Microsoft. I literally do not know. Similarly, people have asked me to talk about my ideas on methodologies like Scrum or Agile, and I don't really have much to say about them. All of those methodologies were created after I left school, so they weren't taught when I was in school. I've encountered them. I've encountered both proponents of them and opponents of them. All I can say is I tend to meet people who love one of those methodologies and hate the others, usually for ill defined reasons. And it reminds me of that old adage of when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I find that there are people who love a particular methodology and want to force everything into that. And it's sometimes hard to make them understand not every phase of game development is going to work with your methodology. It might work in the R&D phase, or it might work in the production phase. It might work in the post-production patch phase. It might work for a DOC, something smaller scoped, but it's not going to work at every phase of the development. I usually just let people figure that out for themselves. I give them a few years in the industry before they realize, it really doesn't work for everything. But if it works for you, have at it. And then finally, the last bit of questions that I cannot answer is when people ask me for advice and they say they're an artist or a sound engineer or going into QA or something, and they ask me for advice. I can give a little advice, but I can't give you anything from my own experience. Never done that. I was hired as a programmer. I've been hired as a designer, and I've done production. That's it. I've worked with marketing. I've worked with QA. I've worked with sound engineers, but I don't know, and especially for artists, I don't know how to give you advice on getting a job, what your day-to-day life is going to be like. I really don't know. It's not my area of expertise. Asking me would be like asking someone on the street. I think you'd be way better served by finding someone who does that for a living and asking those questions to them. So those are the questions I can't answer because I don't know. Now let me talk about some questions I won't answer that I get asked all the time. Anything having to do with the current games that I'm working on. Because one of those is at a company I haven't mentioned, and their game is unannounced. But I am working at Obsidian as a contractor on Outer Worlds 2, but I can't talk about it. People have tried to trick me into things by saying, hey, what would you have improved in Outer Worlds? Or what do you wish made it into Outer Worlds that didn't? Or what was the content for Outer Worlds? A lot of those questions I can't answer because they lead into what's going on in Outer Worlds 2. And I think if you think about it, it's obvious that, hey, if I couldn't get this into Outer Worlds, maybe I'll try to get into Outer Worlds 2, or at least recommend it. So I didn't even want to talk about things I'm recommending that isn't going in because I don't want you to have a list of like, oh, Tim thought this should be in it and they're not doing it. I basically just can't talk about it. Other things I don't want to talk about, so I won't. There's a lot of questions people have about current events. And I'm trying to make this channel a little more timeless. Like if you discover the channel a year from now or 5 years from now, it's still going to have useful information about how to do design and how games are produced and just what the industry's like. But when you ask questions about, hey, what do you think of the whole Unity price structure stuff? Or what did you think of the whole controversy about bear sex in Baldur's Gate 3? This is literally stuff no one's going to care about or talk about in a few months. So I'm just trying to skip that because who cares? Who cares? If go on a news channel, a game news channel, go and read about that and have fun in that comment section. Similarly, people ask me to teach code. They say, hey, can you show yourself coding C# or C++? Can you doing something in Unreal or Unity? And I just feel like there's a lot better channels you could go to have tutorials in teaching code than watching me do it. And also, a lot of my early code, I'm not particularly proud of. It's like stuff I wrote 20 years ago. It's not the best, most efficient code in the world. So I'm not sure I'm the person to go to for that. Similarly, people ask me to review games. You know, hey, what did you think of this game? Can you compare these two games with yours? And I don't really want to do that because, first of all, there's much better reviewers out there. And second, it kind of feels odd to make a game and then compare it to other people's games. It feels mildly narcissistic. So I'm just going to skip all that. And then two more. People ask me about streaming things in general, whether they want to see me stream playing a game or stream coding a game. I don't want to do that. I don't feel like doing that, so I'm not going to do it. Similarly, people ask questions over and over and over. So eventually I just stop answering. There are questions that I've either already answered in a video or questions that I've answered multiple times in the comment section. After a while, guys, I just give up. I'm like, okay, if people don't seem to look at any other videos or question sections, and there are lots of really good search engines for YouTube. I give up. I'm not going to answer a question. I will do it a few times if it's a good question, and then I'll just stop. And I'm like, people can just go look it up. And then I thought I'd end this on a more positive note. So those are all the things I can't or won't answer. I thought I'd do something a little more positive to end this up and say, do you want me to answer your questions? Then here's what you should do. First of all, ask me something new. Yeah, this may require you to do a little search, but the things that really get my attention are when people ask me something new that no one's asked me before. If you want to know if it's a question I'm even capable of answering, watch my video on my career summary, because if you don't see me having experience in the thing you're asking, I'm probably not going to answer your question. So like my career video makes it clear I never worked in indie, I've never done art. I'm not going to really answer questions about that. Now, if you want to ask a question and get a video response, as opposed to me just answering in the comment section of the YouTube channel, then what you need to do is you need to ask a very rich question. And what I mean by that is it can't be yes, no. It can't be a question that has a one-word answer. Like somebody said, hey, what language did you write Fallout in? C. We're done. Questions I really like are questions about game development process, questions about code issues or design issues. How did you do this? How did you figure out this kind of thing? Those are things that I can do a whole video about and will. And I found really good questions in the comment section. So any of my questions that start with me saying, hey, so-and-so asked this question and I'm going to answer it, well, that's a good question. Look at a few of those and you get an idea of what it is I look for. Anyway, I hope this answered your questions about me not answering questions.